Hello and welcome to a brand new Parry's Pickups, where we're back in the UK again. Come back to see Sparks this last weekend. Amazing, fantastic concert. I totally recommend that you go and see them because they put on an outstanding show. Great stuff. But on to games. And I've been buying some 360 games recently, and I'm going to be able to show you some gameplay footage. I usually can't with 360 games because my 360 is in the UK and I do most of these from Denmark, so it's a bit of a treat this time. Most of these are very inexpensive games that I have in my collection felt like for whatever reason I needed them. And first of all, we'll start with Crysis 3. Now I have the first two Crysis games on my Xbox 360, digital only. Played a little of them. Actually, I don't know if I've even played Crysis 1. I think briefly. I liked Crysis 2, what I played of it. The games I picked up really cheaply, and this is no exception. It's with £3, and I was in a mood where I wanted to kind of complete the collection, so I decided to pick this up for £3. And what do I think of it? Well, it's astounding. You know, it feels like fairly generic in terms of first person shooter. You know, all the buttons are pretty much in the same kind of configuration as you'd expect. You have this the super suit. For those familiar with the Crysis series, you'll know about the suit. You play this character called Prophet. To me, it kind of feels like a Master Chief type character. You've got a cloaking ability, which is kind of cool. I like how you can change your weapons on the fly, like add a scope to your rifle or add a silencer to your gun. And the controls, I think, work pretty well for the most part. As I say, everything else is fairly straightforward, easy to pick up. There's a bit of a new gimmick in this game where you have a bow and arrow. They're always fun. I don't know if the bow and arrow is quite satisfying as it is in other games like Tomb Raider or Turok, but it's a cool new addition to the series. The first mission sees you on a very rainy boat, similar to, I guess, Metal Gear Solid 2. And you go in there, you're going to shoot some guys, you're going to try and be a bit stealthy and use your bow and arrow a little bit. And it was fun for when I played. You got this British guy shouting at you. Well, he's not shouting at you, but he's a fairly irritable British guy who's a bit annoyed by something that's been going on to some of his soldiers, I think. Because I've not really played a lot of the other Crysis games, I can't really appreciate the story at this point. And I'm definitely going to go back and play those two before I really get stuck into this. One thing I would say about the game is it struggles a little bit on the 360. It feels like, anyway. It feels like there's some frame rate drops in places, that this game was definitely made for high-end PCs, and then in converting this to the 360, it means that there has to be some sort of downgrading, and it appears to be within the frame rate of the game. It certainly is one of the best games you've ever probably seen running on the 360 though. The detail in especially the faces of the characters, the human character, this guy who's this shouty British guy, he looks really good. Lighting really nice as well. I guess it's a really nice way to showcase how good the game is in as you play on the sea with the rain, on the boat and the lighting, and it's all very nice. So great looking game. Plays solid, enjoyable, definitely worth £3. So that's Crysis 3. And then next up we've got a fairly old 360 game. I'm pretty sure this was a launch title. That's Project Gotham Racing 3. Now I played 4 to death and really enjoyed that game. I used to play it online quite a lot with friends. But I didn't have 3, and I kind of thought, well, do I really need 3? Because 4 was very good, and it's kind of improves and adds the motorbikes in there as well and everything. But again, I was looking at my shelf and thinking, oh yeah, I've got Project Gotham 4. What about 3? That's probably worth a go, isn't it? And yes, so for I think the grand sum of £2, I decided to pick up Project Gotham Racing 3, which at the time I must have been an amazing revelation in video game graphics, because this was one of the first games to come out for the 360, the first racing games anyway, and it's very nice indeed to look at, and it plays just like any other Project Gotham Racing game does. The gimmick in Project Gotham is you get kudos points for doing things like power slides, drafting, and various other, getting a bit of air as you race. And so yeah, there's that extra element to the gameplay which makes it very playable. Handling's great. I've always enjoyed the way these games handle. Bizarre Creations were a great studio. Sadly they're no longer around, but they made some great driving games while they were developing video games, and they also did the James Bond game, Bloodstone, which was very nice. And again, they really shine when it comes to any sorts of the driving sequences in that game. And Blur, of course, which was a fantastic game which really deserves a sequel. One day maybe we'll see a sequel to Blur from the team who made the first one, but with the studio being disbanded, probably not. Anyway, great game, worth £2 for more Project Gotham Racing action, because there still hasn't been a series quite like this with the Kudos system. Next up we have Just Cause 2. I had to double check if it was 3 or 2 there. And we're going down in price even further, from 3 to 2 to £1. This particular game was bought at a, what would you call it? Oh, like a car boot sale. My girlfriend attended, and she saw this. She saw a few 360 games and was asking if I was interested in any of them. I had Just Cause 1, so I thought, I'm going to get Just Cause 2, haven't I? So for £1, pick this one up. No manual, unfortunately, but the game works fine. We were a little bit concerned at first because the disc was a bit scratched, but it's actually no problems running this whatsoever. It's an open world action game. It shows its age a little bit now in some of the cutscenes. It looks a little bit rough around the edges, but the scope of the game's cool. The implementation of the grappling system, even though I struggle with it at first, is actually incredibly simple. I don't know how I ever had a problem with it, but when you first get introduced to this grappling system, basically what's meant to happen when you press the left bumper is you're just meant to kind of zip towards the position you fired the grappling hook at, which didn't work first time I did it. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but after that it becomes second nature. You find yourself grappling around everywhere, and it really helps with the sort of free roaming of Just Cause. I played the first mission, which was cool. It introduced you to all the mechanics of the game. You were collecting these memory cards which got scattered around this facility, and you get to cause a lot of destruction, and that's where this game really shines. The amount of destruction you can cause and how the game sort of relishes in that it's really nice, really nicely done. I just think the shooting was a bit odd because it sort of auto locks onto enemies, but you don't really aim, so you kind of shoot from the hip, which I thought was a bit odd. And I maybe would have preferred a bit of Resident Evil 4 kind of standing and aiming, but in practice I think it helps the game keep fast paced, and that's really what it's all about. It's about over the top action, and I think it's really quite enjoyable. As I say, it does feel a little bit old now. I'd be interested to play Just Cause 3 and see how, if that kind of updates the game and makes it a little bit more of this generation. Of course this was of the last generation, so I can't really criticise it in that department. A lot of action, a lot of free roaming. I kind of like the main character. I'm going to spend a little bit more time with him before I fully appreciate him. But if you love jumping out of planes and doing parachutes, then you get to do that as well in Just Cause, and it would describe on the back of the box as relentless adrenaline fueled action. I think that's exactly what you get with Just Cause. Lastly, probably my pick of the bunch and the most expensive game I picked up recently, that is F1 Race Stars. Now, I think I've seen this game in the past and thought, is it really worth it? Is that a good game, you know? But as soon as you look a little bit closer, you can see Codemasters Racing. We know it's going to be a good racing game there. So basically what it is a Mario Kart type game, a karting game with Formula 1 race stars. So all the big names of the time are in there. You've definitely got Lewis Hamilton and Alonso, and Schumacher's in there as well. So a lot of the most famous ones. You can also race the avatars. It's the art direction is really nice. The characterization is super good as well. They've cut no corners with this game at all. Some of the power-ups may be a little bit underwhelming. They're also, but you've got your typical kind of archetypal power-ups in this game. But it's just they're all sort of like firing balloons and such, firing balloons behind you, balloons in front, balloon missiles, instead of shells it's balloons basically. It's cool when you like lay the ones behind you, the blue ones, and then your opponents get trapped with it, and I think that's a nice implementation of the balloon thing. And then sometimes the confetti covers your screen if you hit a certain other type of balloon, or there's another balloon which fires you off a long kind of bullet type shaped balloon, which is very much like the bullet bill ability in Mario Kart. So yeah, it's definitely taking everything from Mario Kart. It's probably the closest thing to Mario Kart on the Xbox 360 or PS3. This is also available on. But what it also manages to do is retain elements of Formula 1. So you can choose which team member you want to play as at the beginning, and then you also get to do pit stops as well. See, as your car gets hit by weapons, it gets more and more damage and therefore goes slower. So you've got to kind of time your pit stops, which has two opportunities to take a pit stop per race. And that's I think this is a really clever, great addition to make this game really an F1 game. And it also has a safety car which appears at certain times where you have to slow down and drive behind it. A great achievement, I think, a really fantastic game. It'd be nice to see a sequel to this as well, but I don't know if we're going to get one. I may go as far as saying this is a bit of a hidden gem. If you like karting games, if you like Mario Kart or Sonic, All-Stars Racing, or Crash Bandicoot, Crash Team Racing that is, then this game is absolute must-have. And I say it's beautifully made, handles like you'd expect any other Codemasters game to handle really well, really tight. So go and check it out if you haven't already. Even if you don't like F1 and you just like karting games, this is one of the premier karting games available, and I picked it up for £8. So I feel it was worth the money because it is all the games I've talked about today, definitely my favourite. And so that's it. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I think next time you see me I'll be back in Denmark. But for now, until next time, game on.